worse than the second Mission Impossible.
What?
Where do we start? The biggest thing I'd like to know is whose idea was it to make the Mission Impossible franchise into a cheap slapstick comedy?
What about this movie did this person watch and think that?
The Dubai stunt was so over the top, unrealistic, that it's just Tom Cruise saying, "Look at how cool I am."
Why can't it be both?
Yeah, right? At the same time.
Yeah.
I'll take John Woo's Mission Impossible any day.
Oh my gosh, no.
It is a fun film, but
Hold on. No.
That was a 1-star review from IMDb. Hello and welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series and films.
Yes.
I am your host, Andrew, joined as always by Ryan.
Are you thinking about the doves from Mission Impossible 2?
You mean the discount dubs?
The budget doves.
the pigeons? Because I was. I'm here. Hey, how's it going?
And Steven.
Just like that, with a burst of pigeons, I've arrived.
Oh, man. This week, we are discussing the fourth film in the Mission Impossible franchise, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. There's
Ghost Protocol.
4 tied to this. Tom Cruise is actually very happy that there was no number tied to this film.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. They don't have a number in there. It just became a subtitle.
Because he wanted each Mission Impossible film to be its kind of own episodic thing.
You know, he's messed up though, because he's at this point we're winding up right for Dead Reckoning Part 1. You brought the numbers back, Tom. What are you doing?
That was probably studio meddling.
Oh no, it's all downhill from here.
So this is the fourth in our series of Mission Rewatchable, as I've already alluded to, going up to Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, Glossary 4, Appendix 7. So in our
.exe.
in our lead up to that, we are basically doing every single Mission Impossible film that has come out before it, so 6 of them to be exact.
Quite a task.
Yes.
We're actually, I mean, this is number 4. We're getting pretty close.
Yeah.
So these are a little bit different than our normal reviews. We don't break it down into spectacles. It's more of just a roundtable discussion. Spoilers right from the get-go. So
You've already been spoiled. You didn't know it.
You didn't even know it.
if you haven't seen this film and you want to go see it, definitely go watch it. It's honestly pretty fantastic.
Pretty great.
I like it a lot. But yeah, so spoilers are rife. Just going to be roundtable here. We're not going to even do an opening topic. We're just going to talk about Ghost Protocol. So I'm curious. Initial thoughts. What are your thoughts?
I think this is one of the best action movies of that decade, from 2010 till 2020.
I can agree.
Yeah. I remember seeing this in theater and being like, because I was a little lukewarm on 3 when I saw it.
Yeah, because it's J.J. Abrams, a little shaky cam.
Yeah, it was fine. And there was a pretty big gap. That was like, what, 05? Is that what we...
So, interestingly enough, there's a big gap between all of them. There's a 5 to 6 year gap between every single one of these movies.
So I had a long enough time away to be like, I remember the trailer for this, though. I was like, ooh, I like he's running real fast.
Was that the one with the Eminem song for the trailer?
It may have been.
Actually, hold on. Before we get any further, I need to actually go over some information for the film.
Oh yeah, let's back.
Hosting is totally my fault. Yeah. Okay, so directed by Brad Bird. This was his directorial debut
for live action.
This is a heck of a.
Because he's Pixar.
Debut.
He did Incredibles and what
Uh-huh.
else? Ratatouille, maybe.
So he's part. I've got it in front of me. He's part of the senior creative team for WALL-E, Up, Toy Story 3, Cars 2, Womp Womp, Brave, Monsters University, Inside, like just
so mostly
boom, boom,
a lot
boom,
of bangers.
But he directed some of the better Pixar movies, I think.
See, it doesn't credit him. Let me back up to where it says like it never credits him as like a director on IMDb. It's always just senior creative team, but like he had a big part in it. He was a writer for The Incredibles, apparently.
But yeah, so this was his directorial debut for live action. I think he knocked it out of the park. This is written by Josh Applebaum and Andre Nemec, starring Tom Cruise, Simon Pegg, Jeremy Renner, Paula Patton, and then we have cinematography by Robert Elswit. The budget for this film was only $145 million.
That's cheap.
It is very
pennies on the
cheap,
dollar,
especially for how much they got, which was $647.7 million
worldwide.
Globally.
Wow.
Worldwide.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good haul. I feel like wasn't 3 more expensive? I'm gonna look this up real quick.
Music was done by Michael Giacchino, and I mean, this is honestly a fantastic film.
Yeah. I really like this movie.
Yeah, this was one of the films that I saw in theaters 3 times.
Man, you said,
Question mark?
wait, hold on, you
3 or
said
4
this was a
times.
$140 million budget?
145, yeah.
So Tom Cruise, man, working some of that Scientology magic. We've gone 5 years from Mission Impossible 3, and that was 150 million. So
Oh,
he
so he's-
beat inflation and came in cheaper.
What deal did he broker with Lord Xenu to get this?
All right, so Stephen, what do you think about this film?
So it's funny, right? Because I've seen all of these in theater when they came out. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure. Maybe the very last, maybe 6 I didn't see in theaters. I'm not 100%. But I've actually really so I remember 1, I remember 2, and then like 3 I could remember, oh yeah, he's like his wife and stuff. But I've really struggled to recall most of these films, like what actually happens, other than like, oh, he's on the big building and that happens and yada yada, and Simon Pegg's there.
Yeah.
So watching this actually, it's kind of almost fresh. It's a real treat. It's a real entertaining film.
Yeah,
It really
There
is.
is a lot going on here. I got to say, and I think this is held true for basically all of the Mission Impossible series. They really like their gadgets, and I think they make use of their gadgets in a better way than most Bond films do.
Oh, they do.
Because in a lot of ways, when you look at Mission Impossible, you're like, well, this is just kind of the Americanized Bond, right?
It is.
But like the hallway projector screen.
Oh, yeah.
1, really cool piece of tech, and 2, they use it great as like a way of getting around. And then like when it starts having the errors and everything else, or like when Simon Pegg puts his whole face in it, they use it not just as a really cool piece of tech, but it's a cool plot piece. It's a cool comedy piece. Like they do that just boom, boom, boom throughout with a lot of the different pieces of tech.
Yeah, so Brad Bird, the director, specifically wanted every gadget in the film to break or malfunction.
Really?
Because he
That's
wanted,
true, yeah.
he wanted it to be like, they're kind of backs against the
The
wall.
whole premise here is they don't have the
They don't have the
support
backing,
team.
yeah.
They don't have the resources to just get a new, like 3D mask printer.
Yeah.
Well,
When
it
it
breaks.
breaks, like, oh, we're doing it live.
Right.
And those kind of moments really amp up some of the tension because you know that they have no other choice now.
This movie does a fantastic job with the tension.
Oh,
like
man, it does.
like all the stuff breaking on top of like the pacing, the shots, the music, the speed of the editing, the way they cut it. They do a really good job of like punching up those scenes to make you like just on the edge of your seat. Like,
Well, and there's some really fantastic action sequences in here. Not even the stunts, like which we'll get to here in a minute. But I think one of my favorite is whenever they're doing the trade-off for the nuclear codes, and Léa Seydoux' character, like she basically is leaving, and then she sees the contact in Brandt's eye, and she's like, kill them. And then everyone like gets up and they know jig's up.
Like,
they
fights
have to
on,
fight.
yeah.
And the second that the guy draws a gun on Jeremy Renner's character, he immediately gets disarmed, and it's like the gunplay and
he explodes into that.
It's so good because up until this point you just think he's just a normal analyst.
He's just an analyst.
Yeah, but then you actually find out that he's obviously an IMF agent.
More backstory there, yeah. So I got to say, going back to Ryan's point about the tension, right?
Yeah.
So my wife's got one of those, fitness trackers on her wrist, right? It's her watch or whatever. And so like she pulled up the stress graph because she's like, man, I was so stressed out that whole movie, and like the graph on her watch is just like spiking like all over the place.
You could probably even tell where the Burj Khalifa
So
scene is.
she does not do well with height. Like I don't like heights, but I can like watch something like that, right?
Yeah.
She couldn't even watch most of that sequence because she's just like, I can't because when they showed the tower, she's like, oh, I don't like it panning up there. I was like, oh, you're really not gonna like what's coming.
get ready.
I think my favorite part about that whole scene is obviously you have like him climbing up, which is pretty tense, but it's still controlled. And then the second where they're like, hey man, you need to get back down here, and all you see is one cutaway of him looking at like what looks to be like a fire extinguisher hose or whatever.
He's pulling a Die Hard over here.
Yeah, and then like the next thing is like, where's Ethan? And he's just like running on the side of the Burj Khalifa. He's like, oh yeah, here it is.
Yeah.
Well, that bit, like he plays it all the way out and gets all the way down the bottom. They're like, it's not long enough, and he just like looks around him and just like time to do the Mission Impossible 3 trick and make a fulcrum.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Where he does the big swing.
And then he almost fails and runs into the top of the window.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like that's another thing that they do a good job not only with like the gadgets breaking,
Where he's
but
not
with,
an
like,
invincible.
Yeah, like when he
person.
comes in, he doesn't just like slide in, land in a chair, cross his legs and take a drink or something. He like smacks the top of it, almost falls out. Renner grabs him, and like she grabs him too.
Yeah.
Man, I like the team in this one too.
Yeah, the team's really good. They have really good chemistry because you have a little bit of like the sexual tension between Paula's character and Tom Cruise's character and Ethan, but then you also have a really good rapport with Simon and Brant's character with the whole team.
With Renner, I mean, like Benji is a great character, a great addition to the core team. I will say I think we lack a little bit for not having Ving Rhames Luther.
Yeah, it's one of those things to where like
we have a cat.
We've been blessed by a cat.
Hey, kitty. You do feel it, and I felt like when I watched it this time, I was like, I feel like he was in this more because I think I conflate so many scenes of him in other movies
from like Rogue Nation.
Yeah, because like at the end of the movie, he like acts like it's the first time he's meeting Benji, and I go, it's not. And I was like, wait, I think that is the first time Luther met Benji
because he meets him like. Cruise meets him
in three, but like he's not in the field and not doing like Luther's the guy that's doing the computer stuff out in the field. So that was a moment I was like, oh yeah.
It kept throwing me too because like Tom was on his phone like reaching out to a mysterious contact, and I was like, is this Luther? Is this like his moment to appear? Like he like contacts him on the and then it's Bogdan
or what was his name?
Bogdan.
Bogdan, yeah. So actually, speaking of Bogdan, I love that opening scene so much.
The fight, the actual fight in the riot.
I love when it breaks and he's ready to go, and he just like gives him the hand signal for like all of them, open everything this way now, all of it. Yeah.
Well, it's the chemistry there, right? Where Tom Cruise isn't even talking to Simon Pegg,
and you can just
you know exactly what like they know what each other is saying, and like. Cruise knows, or Ethan Hunt knows that Benji's hesitant about this, and he's like, do it. When he's trying to make him open the door so he can go, because he doesn't know like what the change in plan is here. But the actual rumble through the riot while he's trying to drag Bogdan behind him. That's a great kickoff to a show or to a movie.
It's actually kind of interesting, just because it's as fresh in my mind, because when we're recording this, we're going to be also recording Fast X, which have already been out by the time you listen to this. Yeah. But I've been catching up on the other Fast and Furious films just so I can go watch the film. Yeah. Or watch it, going in. And there's a prison break in F8 or F9. I can't remember. It's too ridiculous. But
I think it's 9 because it wasn't really.
No, it has The Rock in it, so it's 8.
Oh, it is 8.
So they have the prison break.
And him,
and if you want a good dichotomy of what a good prison break fight sequence is and what a bad one is, you can watch both of these films back to back, which I did, and you have like a really visceral fight with Ethan Hunt and basically taking Bogdan with him, who doesn't fight at all. Yeah. And then you have The Rock and Jason Statham, which are just superheroes, taking, rubber bullets to the face and all these other kind of things that just completely remove a lot of the...
Any tension, really.
Like, any tension, because you know that there's no way that they're going to lose.
Well, so to contrast it, right, to like scary movies, like with the Friday the 13th franchise and the later ones with Jason, it's not a matter of like, will this thing we're doing kill him? It's not going to. Yeah. It's, okay, how's he going to get through this and hurt the person that's trying to kill him? Same thing with The Rock in F8. Yeah. It's like, there's no tension here on whether or not these guys are going to get out of this prison. We know they're out. Yeah.
It's
100%.
How does it happen?
They're not even going to get hurt. They're getting shot with these rubber bullets and just laughing it off and running it. So this, on the other hand, feels very visceral and very
because you don't know what the whole goal here is for Ethan as he's kind of going
or
through
even
this.
Why he's there. Like they haven't given you any backstory.
Yeah,
they didn't give you any like, oh, this is the heist. We go and we get this guy. You don't get any of that. It just happens.
Yeah. Well, in talking about just like, because I know you mentioned the pacing earlier of like kind of the of everything, you have this really great opening sequence, and then you immediately turn into a heist, like almost like back to back. Yeah. To go and into the Kremlin and try and get these tapes or whatever.
The codes. Yeah. It's not the codes. No, it's not the codes. It's like Cobalt's record.
Yeah. So I was I've been looking up clips, from this movie since I watched it like 2 nights ago, but I was just looking up some. I found a very fun YouTube comment right here on the Kremlin, scene specifically. It says, this guy, username Sport the Little Guy, says, fun fact, Tom Cruise actually went off script here and blew up the Kremlin, but Brad Bird liked it so much he decided to keep it in the movie.
I will say,
Unlike
the CGI,
that, the CGI for me, the blowing up the Kremlin,
so bad.
not the best spot in the movie.
No.
Which presumably a lot of the sandstorm is CG, and it looks fine.
Oh, actually,
Yeah.
I have a whole thing for this.
Oh, really?
Okay, so the sandstorm scene was it was real.
Oh, okay.
Like so,
all of it. Like I feel like there's a couple parts.
Well,
where
so
they're
hold
like,
on.
Yeah.
So the sandstorm scene was shot in open matte super 35 millimeter, not IMAX, or rather than IMAX, due to the fact that blowing sand would be invisible on the film even in IMAX because of motion blur.
Yeah.
So appearing only as red fog, that's just how it would look.
Right, yeah.
The enlarged grain of the 35 millimeter film when blown up to IMAX is the sand. So it's the grain of the film so you can actually see on it, which
you're not actually seeing the grain.
Yeah.
You're seeing the grain of the film.
Yeah.
Interesting. I
So
love
that was kind of how they did it, so they didn't have to CGI it.
right. Well, it shows
Interesting.
because it looks great.
It looks very much so like being in a sandstorm.
Like it's those kind of like. I'll
So
say
did they wait
practical
for a sandstorm to roll up?
That I don't know.
Yeah, like that.
I
To
don't
me,
have
it's
an
like
answer for that.
the mechanics of like we got to shoot this scene today. I don't know. We got to be rocking on ready.
For all we know, like Dubai is just like Florida. At 2 p.m. in Florida it
sandstorm.
rains, and at 2 p.m. in Dubai there's a sandstorm. I don't know.
There's
This is showing my ignorance on weather.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, my ignorance on weather in that part of the world. Like I don't know. Do they have like and today a 30% chance of sandstorms and whatever. I don't know.
I'm sure it is.
I mean, in that case,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, the wind's moving at least.
So maybe they do have a good idea. But yeah, either way, that looks fantastic. The Kremlin blowing up is one of the only real scenes in this movie
fantastic.
that doesn't age well.
Yeah. Now the whole heist inside the Kremlin was
That
phenomenal.
was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing that just because we're kind of talking about Dubai here a little bit, obviously by this point, if you have seen this film and for whatever reason you thought that that was not Tom Cruise on the side of the Burj Khalifa, it is.
It is, yeah.
And the reason why he wanted
He's
to do
insane.
it, one is because he's crazy, but then two, he basically wanted to give Brad Bird more leverage for where he could put the cameras for the stunt. Because he wanted it to show that it's actually him.
Because then, you don't have to be like from the back or from above.
Yeah.
You can see his face, so you can put the camera wherever you want.
So he wanted it to be
makes sense.
as close and intimate as it possibly could be for those scenes, which I thought was a great job.
Which, if you want your crazy fact about the Burj Khalifa stunts, they broke 26 windows on that tower.
That's a lot of windows.
That is a lot of windows. Those are not cheap.
And I wonder how they broke them. Was it just like incidentally, like every time he'd land against the building, a different one would break, or is it like
no? Because those if you're like from an exterior force going onto those, those are really tough,
Well, now-
especially if they have to deal with sandstorms.
Now, I will say it is possible that's the case because those are really when you think about how the window's made, right?
Yeah.
It's meant to take
it's
pretty
not plate glass.
right, but it's meant to take a pretty even force from wind.
Yeah,
Whereas someone stomping with their foot on it is a very
it's a different
specific point of. So
yeah.
that might be where the break is. It's not like they're shattering it; they're just cracking spots going up and down.
That's possible.
Or
it
like
could
while
be,
rigging
cameras,
yeah.
that kind of thing.
Or just even because how do you get to the exterior of the Burj Khalifa? We'll have to take the window out to put stuff probably out the side.
Just throw that chair out the window.
The
Just go
first,
through it.
So basically, to take the windows off, they had to have two guys in basically a window cleaning
Rig. Oh my
rig
gosh.
to just basically take hammers and slowly get it off of its adhesion to the.
Okay, so that's where they broke the windows. Then, can you imagine being in a window cleaning hanging thing on the Burj Khalifa?
So the highest where they were filming is 1,700 feet up compared to the 2,700 or whatever
of the full
height.
Although he has photos of him, he went to the very top
He did,
of that thing,
and
He's
he graffitied the
nuts.
top of it.
Yeah, he scratched in
I think his wife's
name, Katie Holmes at the time.
Whoops.
Yeah. He's like, it's the modern tree. You scratch it in there. No,
He's trying to get back up. Can I get back up? I got to scratch out.
So-
I gotta buff something out real quick.
So we've been gushing about this. Actually, I'll say that the one thing that really didn't do it for me was the villain for this film, because you had because we're coming from Mission Impossible 3, which has
Philip Seymour Hoffman,
such a good villain.
who's just
villain.
intimidating and just seems like he would do
always in
anything.
Control,
Yeah.
just
And then we go to further films, which I'm not going to reveal those yet, but we have really good villains in those too. This one just doesn't guy doesn't. I think he has maybe three.
I was gonna
he
say-
barely has a moment to talk to people. Yeah,
They got
Yeah.
Michael Nyquist. Nyquist, I don't know how he's like
Nyquist.
Nyquist as the villain, who's a good actor.
Yeah, he
was a
is.
good actor. Rest in peace. But he's like he could have been great in this role.
They
It's
just-
just
they
they
just
didn't really
didn't
give
give
him
him
a lot.
anything, yeah.
The one thing I will say though is at the end, when they're in the car garage,
Yeah.
and he just kills himself to get the case away from him, or tries to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that is like, oh wow, like if we could have
Dude is
had
committed
a
to
lot
this.
of build up in scenes before that to make that really pay off, it would
we
have
had
been even
we had
better.
the little bit where they play like the file footage of him
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
being crazy.
Yeah.
But like if we could have had that kind of conversation where it's like he and Ethan are separated by some insurmountable gulf, right?
Or something,
As
yeah.
he's like getting away with the case, and he gets to monologue a little, chew on some
Yeah.
scenery. I think we could have really amped it up. So I will say my one thing that happened in the movie where I was like, wait, what? Is when the case is acquired by presumably, like Cobalt's like right-hand man.
Yeah.
But it's actually Cobalt.
Yes.
And he's chasing him and he rips the piece of the mask off and it's revealed, right?
Why would you take the rest of your mask off?
Well, it's not that, but it's just like
It's probably sweaty.
later they show him being picked up by that guy who's his right-hand man.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, so that dude is real.
Yeah.
Why did you show up wearing the mask? Like, why couldn't it have been your
Probably
right-hand
just
man?
because he wanted to make sure.
But then why did you put the mask on? They don't know who Cobalt is. They do know who this guy is.
Well, but,
it was
Well,
it was
they
just
were
one of those things where I
expecting
just
that
don't
dude. I think.
understand.
They were expecting his right hand man.
Well, that's true.
So I think it would have been weird if like Cobalt shows up. So
yeah.
it was kind of because there's a lot of parts in this movie where it feels like Cobalt is ahead of them, like a step ahead of like
He
figuring
is.
out what's going
Yeah,
on. So I think that was just probably supposed to be another one of like they're expecting this guy, so he's going
And
to show up.
I
as
felt
that guy.
bad for the Russian code specialist guy who's
Oh, yeah.
we need to leave. Then like, nope, he's there. Nope, you're dragged her on. Nope, you're dead. Okay,
Yeah,
wow,
you gotta
woof,
feel bad.
Woof.
The other thing too, I actually felt bad for Trevor, the agent at the beginning that gets killed by Lea Seydoux character.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's Sawyer from Lost.
Sawyer
and
from
I
Lost,
have
yeah.
such a soft spot for that actor just because like of Lost.
And he hasn't been in a ton of big
No,
movies.
he's really not in a lot of stuff. But
Yeah.
like the second that I saw him, and I was like, "Oh, this is perfect for him." Oh no, he's dead.
Oh, he's dead. Rip.
What else?
Well, I mean, just to jump back to the Dubai scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like before you get to the sandstorm, I love that heist. Like they're changing the numbers on
it's
the
great.
On the
hotel
doors.
doors.
Yeah.
They've got this briefcase. It prints. They did a really good job. Again, with any good heist movie, they set up the stakes of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
They let you in on a little of it, and then you discover in the scene what's actually happening. Of like why. Oh, they need to slow down because he's got to blink to take the
Yeah.
pictures and it's printing.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's over here. And they did that good thing of like multiple planes of action, going on where you have her trying to run the grift and then you can
on
hear him
one floor, but the
Yeah.
other floor, yeah. No, that heist is good. We've already said the Kremlin heist is good.
Yeah.
Like the bit there with the interplay with like the code.
Yeah.
And then,
We really get like 3 heists in this movie. We get the Kremlin one, this one, and then the one in India.
Yeah.
yeah, like it's also
And they're all 3 good.
The Mumbai heist is also good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So a couple things that I have a little bit of trivia for.
ooh, trivia. Let's go.
So Brad Bird says his only offer for so actually initially J.J. Abrams was supposed to make this or direct this film as well, but he was working on 2009 Star Trek, which I think that was a better use of his skills
Yeah.
for that one.
well, because Bad Robot is
He's
part of
still
the
a producer
production.
on this
Yeah,
movie.
it's part of the
he's still a
production,
producer. Yeah. So Brad Bird says his only offer for the film came from a text message from the previous film's director J.J. Abrams that simply read "mission?" ?
Oh my gosh.
wow, Abrams. Come on.
What was his response? Yeah, sure.
Sure, whatever. Then Lea Seydoux' character or performed her on-camera role in English, and she dubbed her own lines in French for the release. Because
Makes
she's
sense,
French,
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the last one that I had was Brant, Jeremy Renner's character, was actually written and cast in the idea that he would take over as the lead protagonist for the Mission Impossible films whenever Tom Cruise decided that
done.
he was
Yeah.
done.
So like they were already grooming this guy for Bourne taking over Bourne and this because Bourne Legacy came out 2012.
Yeah.
This was 2011. And so they were going to have Jeremy Renner is going to be the Bourne takeover and the Mission Impossible takeover.
And,
Wow.
and neither happened.
And also,
neither happened, yeah.
And also active in the MCU.
Yeah,
Yeah, at the same time.
Again,
Hawk,
like Renner was like so hot right then.
Man. Guy's agent is
actually, I-
fantastic.
Right?
I really like him in this film.
He's
Yeah,
great.
he's good.
He's a good extra kind of, I'll say, capable agent.
Yes.
Because the big problem with a lot of these kind of like team-based like films is you have one dude that is the action star,
Right.
and then you have everyone else that has their own specialties.
They're very niche in their abilities.
Where this one, you have another guy that can do the same stuff that Ethan can do. He just doesn't have the edge that Ethan has.
Right, he's not as crazy as he wouldn't jump out on a
he's more
Burj Khalifa.
He's more of the analytical mind, and that comes up like he kind of puts up the roadblocks that Ethan has to punch through.
Yeah.
But even like
you have that great scene basically after the Burj Khalifa heist or whatever you want to call it, where they're kind of like going at it of, it's like, well, no, actually that's beforehand where he's trying to convince him to not use real nuclear codes.
You can't hand over the real codes.
Yeah.
Well, you also have the bit where they're in the SUV, right? And they get burned, and you have all the Russians firing on them when they're underwater, which that's not how bullets work underwater, but whatever.
I mean, if it's short,
have you been underwater when bullets were shooting at you?
I mean, if it is shallow enough.
Okay.
If it's shallow enough.
It's not shallow.
No, I know. It
hit only a foot or two.
I'm just going to say this. Mythbusters did a whole thing on this. If it is shallow enough, you definitely could take damage from bullets.
Yeah, it'll
But you got to be like 3 feet under.
Okay.
This was like at
good to
least
know.
20.
Yeah, you got to be real close to the
under.
top. And also, the faster the bullet moves, the more quickly the bullet disintegrates when it hits the water.
Yeah.
Because I guess the impact is
so like if you have like subsonic rounds, I think you actually get deeper penetration into the water.
Yeah.
But they're firing some pretty high power. There's one dude.
So if you just throw the bullet at the water, it's a better chance of getting down.
There's one dude when they like tell him to stop firing, he pulls up. The dude's got like a Barrett 50 cal. I was like, oh my god!
That scene though, where they kill the Secretary of State.
Oh yeah.
Like is that what he's Secretary of State?
Secretary of State. Yeah.
That was intense.
Secretary of State, but he's like in charge of IMF.
He's somehow
He's either way. He's a high-ranking official.
They like stay down. And he looks up and he gets shot through the forehead. You're like, whoa!
Oh, that hits like boom.
They don't go that visceral in the Mission Impossible movies a lot. Like with the actual seeing the bullet wound and stuff.
Yeah, because they're pretty bloodless films for the most part.
Yeah.
For as many bullets get fired.
And that scene too does a really good job of surprising you because you really think, okay, this is the release intention after
we're gonna calm down a little, reset,
and it's like boom, that whatever happens outside, like an explosion or something, you're like, what? And my surround sound system, it was crazy loud,
and it scared Holly
jolted
when we were
me,
watching it.
And then it kicks right back off. So that was a good use of again pacing and
Well, and really like giving you just enough exposition to understand the stakes, and then you're like, nope, we're right back in it.
Well,
Let's keep going.
It never really like lets the agents sit still. They never have a moment where they get to just be like, whew, okay, well, I'm glad that's over. Let's head back to hang out in New York or something. They just don't have that chance.
I liked the Russian KGB agent that was kind of like following him around.
That was a good dynamic too.
Our counterpart to
IMF.
To IMF, yeah. I think he's a good character.
He was. Like
that was a fun angle.
Pretty good on-screen chemistry for like being, essentially adversaries. But Ethan Hunt's like, I'm not your enemy, dude. Well, and like, nah, man.
It's not that dynamic hasn't been seen before because it has. I'm not the bad guy, you'll find, and then the cop later. Yeah, right. Like you've seen that play out, but it still did it very enjoyably. Like I enjoyed that because he again adds like another wrinkle to things. And then like when he does meet up at the end and you have that moment where he's clearly putting together the pieces of like, I think he just stopped a nuclear war.
And he's like, you are not my enemy. And then like Cruz just like shakes his head because he's just so beat up.
And it's like, hospital?
Yes. Well, I also really like the actual hospital scene because again, and this is playing off because this is really where it feels like 3 is the start of Mission Impossible as a franchise.
Yeah.
But this is the moment where they really drive it home, not just with the whole wife stuff, but also like we go back to the whole lip reading bit, right?
Yeah.
He does that. And also we have another escape from like an enclosed environment. But, in 3, he gets handed the knife to get out or whatever.
Yeah.
And in this one, it's just literally the orderly puts the files down and he grabs the paper clip and then he's, picking the lock and he's out and gone. I love the bit too where she picks up the files and they all just fall apart. She's like, oh, what the?
Well, that's just a good little bit of detail that you just wouldn't think to like throw in there. And then the second it happens, you're like, yep, we know. Like, well, we saw him take it, but like that's just a good like, hey, if you missed it. He took
it's a good setup payoff of like it's a quick reminder of like, oh, Ha ha ha. That's what would happen if you grabbed papers that didn't have,
Well, then you have the great little scene of him on the ledge, and it's like, "You gonna jump?" And he's like, "It looked like thought it was a good idea."
It was a good idea at the time. Yeah. Well, I also like how our 1-star review at the start, he complained about the comedy, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like they actually do a much better job of layering in
some great comedic
beats like
timing.
that, because that's there's two professionals. Like, he leans out the window, he's like, "Yeah, you gonna jump?" And he's like, "Well, a good idea at the time." The dude's like, "All right, well, take your time." He pulls out the cigarette. Like, that's so good.
Well, because in 3 there was some of that stuff, but it was not quite as smoothly implemented.
Yeah, it felt very natural in this.
Well, and you have like some of the great, like after the whole scene of them like basically dragging Ethan from the window after he tried to jump in, and then you have Benji just walk in. He's like, "What are you guys doing?"
Well, no, he's like, "Whoo! I just changed
I changed all the doors.
Yeah. What have y'all been doing?" Yeah, it's like he's the one who's been like put out, and they're all just like half dead. The Mumbai heist too. Like, there's a lot of good comedy between her and the dude.
Oh yeah, the
she's
billionaire
seducing,
guy.
and then at the same time, Jeremy Renner trying to decide if he's going to jump into this fan. And
He's
Benji's
doing
like,
the stretches.
yeah, theoretically it'll catch you. It's fine. No, he's like, the science is sound. He's like, but is it going to catch me? He's like,
Pretty sure.
Pretty sure. And then like when that
He's
again,
just like, pretty sure.
and the way he gets out of it by like tucking in at the end. So, he gets on the magnetic, whatever conveyor, and he's inside there, which who knows how magnets work, whatever. And then, that part of the heist is going, when it fails, he gets out, and then, he can't get back up to the
wind's
thing.
blowing him, yeah.
That comedy, it's a very tense scene, but they also are able to pepper in, I don't know, really good lines from Renner, and his performance in that scene is great too.
Well, and the next time that they have to seduce a rich guy, he gets to do it.
Yeah, that was a good line. It was a good way to end it.
I also liked it. It was a bit of an homage to the first Mission Impossible, whenever Ethan Hunt is basically like hanging or suspended above.
They love doing the drop.
Yeah.
The drop is
and
kind of
he
the
gets to do
signature
that for
thing.
this, where clearly he'd just be impaled by the
Right,
terribly designed fan. But,
Yeah, right.
Who made this fan?
Which I also love how, and I guess you kind of get away with it, but not to poke holes or whatever this, but like they're like, we're going into this big computer, and how are we suspending you? Big magnet, rip computer.
Yeah.
All
the hard drives are just getting formatted as they drop.
well, if they're solid state, it doesn't matter. It's only if they're actual hard disk drives. But a solid state wasn't really a big thing back in 2011.
Oh, it's not even that. Like, contemplate the weight of Jeremy Renner and how big a magnet it requires to suspend his weight. It's not wiping the hard drives. It's forcing them out of their seating and slamming them into. It's ripping them to pieces.
Ripping them. Real quick tangent magnet story.
Oh boy,
we'll get back. At my first TV station that I worked at, there was a device that lets you bulk erase tapes.
Yep.
It's a giant
huge
square magnet,
it's a
right?
degausser.
And it has a knob on the front, just it comes on, and you rub the beta tapes across it. Beta was used up to the mid 2014s.
Yeah,
it's a better format than VHS.
we had beta tapes at CBS when I worked there.
This kid had just started working there, and he was in master control. And he
Wipe
walked
all
over there.
his-
He laid his phone down on top of this thing, threw a tape on it, and I was like, and I couldn't say anything in time, and he went, and then he picked the tape up and kept going. I go, "Get your phone off of there!" And he's like, "Why?" And I was like, he picked it up. A brick. It was literally it wouldn't, the screens, nothing's responding.
Yeah.
It just, nothing exists inside that phone anymore.
Magnet.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
That was the wildest thing I'd seen. And this is
incredible.
like we're talking iPhone 2, iPhone 3. Like
Okay,
we're
so
talking
this is like 2010.
right. Yeah. So these are expensive phones. Not everybody has them yet, and just
Heartbreaking.
gone. That's how magnets work. Moving on.
I wonder if he actually could have warrantied that, because there's probably no real evidence.
There probably wasn't. It was a clean death.
He's like, I don't know, man. It's just dead. And they're like, boy, he's not kidding. There's nothing in this thing.
There's no signs of damage. Yeah, he probably could have. Yeah.
Oh man,
That's incredible, man. Woo. I don't think about that often, because like nowadays. When you were a kid and you had a computer, it's like, oh, you can't have a drink on the same desk as that computer.
Oh, yeah.
Or whatever. And now, I've got my work laptop's sitting there closed on the dock, and I got a freaking water bottle just sitting on
Steven
there.
lives on the wild side.
Steven pours his water across his keyboard and then drinks out of it.
So here's another piece of trivia. So going to the car parking garage scene. So whenever he uses the car to basically go down to the bottom and uses the airbags to stop that.
I thought you were going to say Tom Cruise really did that stunt.
Well, so the car wouldn't actually be going fast enough to deploy the airbags in that specific BMW.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Really?
How fast would it be going?
It would have to be faster than 55 miles an hour.
Oh, okay. In that specific,
and because he dropped basically 100 feet, it's not fast enough.
like
Gravity doesn't
35 or
accelerate it. Yeah.
Yeah, so technically he just would have died.
He would just smash his head on the steering wheel. It was still a cool. It was still.
No, it's a great use of the tools at hand.
Yeah, well, like that whole fight sequence is like such a race, literally to the bottom.
Yeah.
But like just a race to just like there are no resources here. He's so spent, and they're just beating the crap out of each other and taking so much pain.
And the little elevator, the car, spatula that's like going up and down. That he like falls on at that one point, and he's like halfway over there reaching for the case, and he can't quite grab it, and then he just like
up from
peels
the
off.
bottom of it.
Oh yeah,
So he thinks it's like, where's Ethan? And then he just comes up from the bottom.
You think he's got the case, and he just boop.
That's a really like visceral scene too, because like both of these guys are just getting the snot beat out of them.
Well, and again, that's when he just decides to like take the nuclear option and just jump off, literally jump off with the
case.
The case
is like, this is
I will deny you this for the 20 seconds needed.
Well, and the way he jumps too, he just kind of like dead fishes off the edge. He just goes to the edge and just kind of like goes limp, and then you're like, oh, like not even a cool jump, no catchphrase. He just like
he just
goes
goes
right off. Yeah.
I did like that they still called back to his wife from Mission Impossible 3, and then you do get a little bit of a moment there at the end where she sees him and she knows that he's still watching over her and that kind of thing, which I thought was really really.
Well, it's very much so like he's like elevated to kind of the Batman or Spider-Man level in that moment of like when you can't have someone because people like Philip Seymour Hoffman, et cetera, are gonna make use of that, but he still wants to be with her, right?
Yeah.
So
and they don't really get into the mechanics of what happened. Did he tell her this is a divorce, or is this like a I'll be around, and she saw him and she wants to go talk to him, but she doesn't, because presumably throughout the movie you think she's dead. Because of
which is
Brandt.
a great driving force for, I think, like the reconciliation at the end, obviously, because they've clearly had their differences, him and Brandt, but then you finally have that as like, she's not dead, bro.
Well, also poor Brandt, like he's like been like steeling himself up to say this line, and he says it, and Cruise is like, "Yeah, it's no big deal."
No worries, bro. Anyways, here's your phone. She's over there. I do too. I like that last scene. You have the good like 3 planes of action. You got Benji and Paula Patton with the hard drives, and he's trying to reconnect things. You got Brandt fighting the number 2 henchman dude.
Yeah,
and he keeps trying to reach and turn the power on. It's just not happening. And then you have Cruise in that. That's a very interesting like layout for the garage also, like because like you think about like other action movies, we've seen people scuffle in a room similar to like the power thing, but I've never seen anybody jump in between car elevators.
Oh, it's such a great environment for this too, because like we've had parking deck car chases, right? Like that's old hat at this point.
Yeah.
But this is like the parking deck of the future, and like how do you like parkour? Like how do you get around this?
Yeah. So I really like the way that all again the editing in this movie is impeccable. Like the way they just cut between scenes. It really just keeps the tension and the flow going. It never stalls out.
So the one thing, the one thing that I really like for that final like bit is when Benji's like trying to wire everything. They actually
they show him like cutting himself on it.
They show him cutting himself on the wires, which is one of those big things where whenever I have to wire like Ethernet, like RJ45, I can't stand it. And I've cut myself multiple times having to do that, and I like that they actually had that detail in there, because it's one of those big things where it's like that is a real risk whenever you're trying to do that.
Oh, those little wires will go right in there, man. Like, ugh. But so my point was, I really like, again, like the 3 planes of action, right, where we all have our own objectives we're trying to achieve. But that fight in the power room with the switch, right? I really love that style of fight where it's not just me, you, we throw punches and whoever's standing at the end. There's an objective.
I've got to get to the switch.
One of them's fighting to prevent it, and the other's fighting to get, like, it's not just, I get a hit. This is my chance. Lunge. Oh, he grabbed my leg, pulls me back. Like, that's such a more intense moment because we know the stakes involved than just, I punch, you punch,
It's
I
not
punch,
just
you
a
punch.
showdown.
Yeah.
The objective changes everything.
Well, and those kind of moments are really what set, I think, like I'll say, good action films and bad action films, or
definitely
less than good action films.
Less than good.
Well,
So
that's
not
the thing.
good?
Is like if you like, I already talked about it, but if you go back to like the Fast and Furious franchise,
Less
you
good.
have these fights, which sometimes the choreography is quite good, but there's no real plot attached to it beyond just you're the bad guy, I'm
Fight
the good
happens.
guy.
Well,
we
we're here
gotta
to
fight.
punch each other out. Yeah.
Where like this, you actually have like true objectives that have to be met, and you have that tension because we have a nuclear missile that is going to go hit San Francisco, of course.
Yeah.
And could be New York City.
Think of the trolleys.
Well, and shoot, I had it there, but also it's very well spelled out for us too what everyone's objective is.
Yeah.
Like it's very clear what they need to have happen for each of them.
Yeah.
So like it's not just the tension of the fight, it's also, Benji doing quick hot wiring while, they're trying to cover while she's already been wounded and like it's good pretty much throughout.
Yeah.
And I've been gushing about the movie. I feel like a lot of us have been, but like it really is a masterclass in how to do an action movie, implement comedy, have setup and payoff, have tension that builds perfectly and
It just keeps going. Oh man.
And it still surprises you, like the limo scene, where you think, okay, we're going to get a reprieve and you don't.
Yeah.
And like just the whole combination of all of it and the way it's shot, the way the action is choreographed, the way the action shot, like the whole sandstorm. There's so many memorable scenes visually, like the sandstorm scene. I've never seen another action movie before this that had like a sandstorm in it. I've never seen anybody jump off the...
You have a little bit of also like plot contrivance with just like the tracker that he can,
A little bit.
Right,
like,
but like that, like just the tracker and like I'm chasing you on foot through like narrow alleys, right? That's been done to death, right? But what if we add the sandstorm to it, where like they both like grab articles of clothing from the market and to cover up, and like then like Ethan's like goggles, which we paid off earlier with Brant being like goggles. And, oh shit, I still have those around my neck,
Again, setup and payoff. And they also do a good thing too, to me, with the tracker is like, it is contrived that that's happened before, but they give it the qualifier of like, it's good for maybe half a mile.
Yeah.
So you have in your head, the stakes and the range. So it adds immediately tension to the scene versus...
It's like the second that he gets in the car, you're like, you got to find a car, man.
You got to find a car now. So
Yeah.
that subconsciously just builds with you and plays with the scene. Whereas a lesser movie, would have just been like, here's a tracker, and then it'd be like...
We just know where they are.
Yeah, or the guy would crush it in his car or something, and be like, oh, we lost him, where this is like, it very much sets up the parameters, and that makes it more tense.
So, because I know whenever we did our episode for Mission Impossible 3, and as we're kind of winding down here, the, that was, we consider that the proto start for essentially the Mission Impossible franchise. But I really think that this film set the real tone for the rest of the films that have come after it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because you definitely still have, because now you have the full core cast of characters.
Yeah.
Then you have the comedy that kind of gets in there. You have the general style of what the action needs to be. Because J.J. Abrams' action is very different, because that was back when Bourne was really popular.
The shaky
and the
cam.
shaky cam and everything like that.
Yeah.
You move away from that and you move a little bit more to like proper choreography.
Can you imagine
stuff.
how bad the prison sequence would be if it was shaky cam? Man, we'd be complaining so hard about that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so you have like, I think Ghost Protocol, I think is maybe the best one. I don't know. Fallout may be really close.
Well,
this is really good.
This is something too that we harp on back in our 007 doubleheader.
Yeah.
Reviews, which are kind of similar format to this.
Yeah.
If you want to go check those out, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
But it's the same idea where it's like, this is kind of like 3 is where the franchise starts, really, right?
Yeah.
Like 1 and 2 are so different from any of these other movies.
Yeah.
And then 4, I think, is where they really like hammered the formula down. Like, this is what we just need
This
to
is what we want it to be.
fit this framework, but let's use different pieces going forward, right?
It really is weird, because 3 specifically is like a bridge movie where it is still a slave to a lot of the filmmaking techniques of its time, and it feels very dated when you watch it now, just like 2 and 1 does. Like 1 is a 90s movie, 2 is definitely a movie that came out in the year 2000.
Boy, is it ever.
3 is definitely a movie that came out in the mid-aughts because it's got like the color grading is green and orange and like the shaky cam and like everything's high contrast, you know. But it's not bad. But it sets up the events that this movie and the subsequent
really
builds off of.
But this one feels like the first one that is like not timeless, but like when I watch this, there's no filmmaking technique that makes me go like, oh, this is 2011. It's so 2011.
Well, maybe the CGI from the Kremlin.
The Kremlin, that's it. But like the filmmaking techniques, though, there's no like bleach bypass color grading throughout the entire thing or any of that stuff. So 3 is weird in that it is the start of this arc, if you will, but it still itself was like 1 foot in very not hokey filmmaking, but like what I'm trying to say, like
dated.
Yeah, it was like
it's a
chasing the trends.
It's a product of its era where you're like, you go back and you watch a movie, and you're like, oh, that's right.
And
like 2003, every movie was green.
And you couldn't have You couldn't have the films we have now without those films.
No,
that's never really a knock on it. It's just like those type of techniques that existed back then that people were like, oh yeah, we probably shouldn't do this anymore. Like those kind of things just exist.
Well, it's kind of like going back through, like your aunt's yearbook or something, and she's in high school in the 80s, and just the big hair, right? It's the same kind of idea of like where she's like, wow, like everyone did this. Why?
Well, and it's kind of like the example in the very first Mission Impossible with the user interface and like what people thought. It's
GUI,
like they did the technology to create GUIs and stuff was so new that they didn't know that it looked like garbage.
Yeah.
They were just impressed by the fact that they could do it.
Yeah.
So again, in Mission Impossible 3, which I think was 2005, that sounds right. 6. 06.
One of the two, either way.
Yeah, I think it's 06. Either way, they had the technology to do the green and orange color grading and the really high contrast stuff. They just didn't know at the time that this is going to be a fad. This isn't going to be a thing that carries. Whereas this Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol feels like one of the first movies that I remember seeing that feels like this is what modern action filmmaking is. You know what I mean? This is like after 2010, this is like it set the standard for like what how things should be shot. Get rid of the shaky cam.
We
shoot it wide so you can see it all happen.
We learned the right lessons from Bourne and not the wrong lessons. And carried those through. Really, I think the one thing about this film that holds it back, that when we're comparing like 3 and 4, I keep going back to is we don't have the villain.
He's the villain in that
our villain here is really almost just a MacGuffin. He's just an object.
If they could have saved Philip
acquired.
Seymour Hoffman for this one.
Man.
If you actually look at it from the perspective of if this is going to be the team, most of the team moving forward, then this was the one that we didn't need a really strong villain. We needed a strong team,
and we got
to
that.
build
That's true. Yeah.
So then we can have stronger villains later on because we already have set up all the characters.
We've got the
really
chemistry,
need.
the building blocks are there, and that's fair. It's just again comparing it back to 3, where it's like that was such a good villain.
Okay, so since we're kind of wrapping up, I have one more piece of trivia that is pretty minor, and then we will shill for the Patreon, and then we will wrap it up. Yeah. So this film came out in IMAX. I saw it in IMAX. There was actually only 30 minutes of actual IMAX film in the whole movie.
Is it all the
it's all the Burj Khalifa stuff.
Okay.
Of course it is. Where else would it be?
Yeah, I mean,
well, I question that just because like IMAX cameras are gigantic, so that's probably like even heavier to try suspend.
Why do you think they broke all those windows?
They broke it through the window and then had it strapped to the.
Yeah. Well, also, you're like
it's like holding a tractor off the side of a building. It's not quite that bad.
I really want to get like the perspective of how tall this building is. Slap the IMAX on it sideways. Put it on there in portrait mode. Let's get the whole expanse.
Cinematographer's probably like, no, wait. This is the scene with the IMAX cameras.
All right, so ship those to Dubai. Yeah. Wait, what? What?
I'm gonna need a lot of support.
All right, so that does sound like we are wrapping up here. But before we go, we do have to talk about the Patreon, which we do have. You can support the show for just as low as $1 a month.
Yeah, it is literally the most direct way to support this show. We use your money to buy new equipment, to pay hosting fees, to do all sorts of great stuff. But it's not just for us. You also get access to all of our bonus episodes that we've ever done, and we've got some doozies out there.
Guaranteed once a month.
And we're going to do at least once a month. Sometimes we'll do more.
I mean, we went out there and
Yeah.
we spent hard-earned patron money to go buy a bunch of different drinks and do some soft drink taste test comparisons.
Oh yeah, that one. I get a stomachache every time we mention
I
that
think
one.
about Mike Gup's stomach. She's like,
But I don't want to think
We
about
may
the
have to do a chips episode. You don't know.
ooh,
a
yeah.
chip,
chips would be good.
Chips
would
could
be
be
good.
good.
Are Takis chips? Would you consider Takis?
what is a
chips?
talkie?
Those are like
What
the.
are how white are you, Steven? It's like a little like I don't know Dorito
Those
flavored
taquitos.
stick. It's like a taquito. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, it's like a dried taquito.
I've
Yeah.
actually never had those.
I've never had those either.
Oh, but you boys are missing a world of zesty flavors.
So on top of bonus episodes, we also have movie commentaries that we will basically Mystery Science Theater 3000 it
Yeah.
and talk over the film, and you can listen along. You have an episode right now you can go listen to Phantom Menace.
Yeah,
It's
in our
available for
normal
everyone
feed. Yeah.
for free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just slap it on your own TV, however you have it, DVD, Blu-ray, Laserdisc, what I don't judge.
Yeah.
Put it up there. You
VHS.
You play the movie on your TV. You play the
you
podcast
sync
on our phone
sync
or
the
whatever.
podcast on your phone
Yeah.
or your speaker. Put a Bluetooth earpiece in there and listen to it, and it's just like we're there in the room with you.
Get your dad's old stereo system, wheel it into the living room, hook us up so we're real loud. Yeah.
Now, if $1 is too much, or you just don't want to do that, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
You can absolutely still support the show by giving us a review.
Yeah.
By sharing us with friends.
Follow us on Spotify.
Spotify. Share us on social media whenever you see our posts. That would be fantastic.
Just spread the word about our podcast. That would be great.
Greatly appreciated.
Absolutely.
So, that does sound like all the time we have this episode. So until next time, I'm Andrew,
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Steven.
and every spoiler was intended.